This was a hard list to make, you guys. But you know what? The calendar dictates that this video I can't put it off any longer. Let's talk about those 10. Hey, what's up, bookworms? It's time to talk about those top 10 books that I read in 2021. There's always a list that is really tough to make. This year, it was especially hard. And I mean especially hard, and that I'm going to have to cheat and put a couple honorable mentions in there. Before I get in, there's a couple of ground rules here. First, I just want to let you know will be no rereads. Nothing that I reread this year is going to count. No mangas are going to count because this is just books here. And this is not going to have anything that has more than one per author, because that's something I feel like you can get really cheatsy with. And there are plenty of books that I read multiple from a single author this year. But I read 73 books in total this year. I'll list those in a pinned comment below if you want to check those out. I did also do 38 manga volumes if you count those, but a lot of people don't. But again, since those don't count on this list, I'm going to just kind of talk about just those 73, or really just these 13, because I do have 3 honorable mentions that I want to go ahead and start with. Now, the first one is Son of Joe. This is Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. Really good. Not quite good enough to crack into that top 10, but I did want to give it a mention here because I thought it was a really great debut from the son of Steven. I think this is really just showing he's spreading his wings a little bit here. And that is this, and it's funny because this is the first book that he wrote, but it's the second one that I've read. I read Nosferatu first and loved it. I went back to this and I was like, really, this was his first book? How impressive is that? So I'm looking forward to continuing with Joe Hill next year, maybe with The Fireman, I think is the one that I got coming up next. Now, I didn't have a hard copy of that one to show you guys. The rest of them I have hard copies for. The next one is a personal friend of mine, I guess you would call him now. But this is an author that I discovered a couple of years ago, and I've really grown attached to his series. He's got a new book coming out in March. This is Howling Dark from Mr. Christopher Rocchio. This is book number 2 in the Sun Eater series. And guys, this is the best sci-fi series going right now. And I'm not saying that because I feel like I'm friends with this guy. I think that this series is so well written and so underrated. And I feel like it's starting to get there because I go to like Barnes & Noble and stuff now. And I'm starting to see copies of it everywhere I go. So I'm very excited for Christopher because I think this series is really great. And I think it's taken off finally. And anything I can do to help him do that, I'm going to do. So it's, again, I want people to understand that it isn't just like a personal thing here. It's everyone I recommend this to, they read it and they love it. So yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like it's a very hidden gem, but people that read it really do love it. And the second book, I like book 3 almost as much, but this one was just a little bit more because I like a lot of the space travel that they did in this one. But yeah, he introduces this little character right here in this book, and well, you'll have to read to find out. I hope that you will. And then a book that it probably should have been on my top 10 because both books 5 and 6 of this series made books of the month for me in this year. But, you know, they put them together in one volume, Heir of Novron. But I wanted to speak specifically of Persepolis because this is the final book in the Writer of Revelations. But, you know, this binding, they put them in 2 and 1. Wintertide and Persepolis both were my 2 favorites in that entire series. He took all of the stuff that you were loving in that series and he wrapped it up so perfectly. Could not have been done better. And again, Royce and Hadrian, my favorite fantasy duo. I love them to death. So this series cannot recommend enough. But guys, let's get into those 10 now. The first one up is number 10. This is one that I started reading this series this year because I felt like it was one of my bucket list items. This, of course, is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Now, if you watch my most disappointing books video, you know that Assassin's Quest did not end the way that I hoped it would, but I wanted to make sure I gave attention to Assassin's Apprentice, which started the way that I hoped it would. I think, again, one of my favorite things, guys, is the coming-of-age tale, and Robin Hobb does that great here. She is really good at writing young characters, I think, and really the relationship of characters through the years, and that is well on display here. And, guys, this is even before Night Eyes is introduced in this, so this is my favorite book of the Farseer trilogy. You know that she did something really special here for me, and again, that is the coming-of-age. It cannot be topped for me. She does it almost as good as my guy King, I think, in this book. So I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, Farseer, especially Assassin's Apprentice, really isn't that great. I disagree. This is my favorite of that trilogy, and I would recommend it to anyone and everyone. If you love fantasy whatsoever, I think you're going to have a great time with it. And of course, read these illustrated editions because they are just beautiful, just like her writing is absolutely beautiful. And this book really took me all the places that I wanted to go when visiting a new fantasy world. Now, number 9 here, this one was actually kind of tough because I'm going to go ahead and let you know it's a Blake Crouch book. And I read 5 Blake Crouch books this year, and I loved them all. Capital L, loved them all. So when by own rule here, where I can't put more than one book here, it was really, really close, guys, because I love Dark Matter, I love Recursion, I love the Wayward Pines trilogy, but I had to go with Dark Matter. Not just because it was my introduction to Blake Crouch, but because I have always had an interest in, you know, the string theory, the multiple realities, things like that, infinite universes and stuff. And this really tackles that stuff head on. And this was the most Michael Crichton I had felt out of a modern author, you know, since Michael Crichton. So it was very, very exciting for me to feel like I found this big discovery, which isn't a big secret. I mean, I know Blake Crouch isn't exactly a hidden gem. I mean, the dude's sold a lot of books, and he's always on the New York Times bestsellers list. So it's not like this is some secret that I found. But I feel like I've also introduced him off of my feedback on it to people who probably said they probably never would have gave Blake Crouch a chance, and now they love him as well. So this guy, if you're just looking for absolute adrenaline ride, his books are just fantastic, especially between like big epic fantasy books. Pick up one of these, you're going to fly through these books. And again, that reminds me of Mr. Crichton, and I do hope to talk to Mr. Crouch on the channel sometime this year. We kind of had like a brief conversation about it, and he's finishing up a book right now, and he said maybe after he's done with the crunch process of that, maybe we can get him on, because I'd love to pick his brain. Number 8, an author that I did speak with. If you guys know by now, I am a big fan of Joe Abercrombie, and I'm a big fan of The First Law, and I'm a big fan of The Wisdom of Crowds, the final book in the Age of Madness trilogy. This tied up everything just about that I wanted. There's still one lingering thing. You'll have to watch my spoiler talk that I did with Philip on this to talk about why there's still one little thing that still is really just getting me. That's been getting me since the original trilogy in this series. But you know what? If that leaves it open for Joe to write more in this universe, I'm always going to be okay with that. But this just, again, proves that he is the master of just showing what things look like on the ground level when everything goes to chaos in a war. You know, just the beginnings of it to just once you're on the street level and everything just kaboom everywhere. Really, no one is doing it better for me. And Joe just continues to hit home run after home run, especially in the First Law universe. I'm going to be checking out his other stuff next year. I'm going to be doing Shattered Sea for the first time. But yeah, he's just awesome when it comes to First Law, guys. If you haven't read Joe Abercrombie yet, and you're subscribe to this channel, I don't know why I haven't gotten you to read First Law yet, but I hope that you will. Number 7, you guys do know that we are doing the big Malazan read-along this year. Yes, a Malazan book did place on this list. Now, the weird thing about this is that I had Midnight Tides on my book of the month for, I forget what month it was, but it was the book of the month for that month. But that's not the book that I've got here. I've got the Bone Hunters. Bone Hunters is basically the Malazan book I had been hoping for ever since I started this series. It is a huge book that I flew through in a week and a half because it could not stop turning the pages because they were just that good. It's everything about it I wanted. It was all the conversions. I had gotten all this build up. It's like basically you had taken all your classes and you knew everything and you were ready to ace that test. That was what this book was for me. Everything. I was like, I know what's going on. This is great. Finally, I feel like that. So everybody had told me when you get the Bone Hunters, it all clicks in place. And at first I was like, book 6, you got to get to book 6 before it makes sense. And I get what they mean now. No, unfortunately, we have different opinions on book 7. But this one, guys, this hit every note that I wanted to. Maybe the best actual siege that I've ever seen in a just any kind of battle. I mean, it's like I said, I put it right there on par with the last battle in Wheel of Time. It was just that good. The last siege of Yucatan, so good, so well written, guys. And it's just, and that's the first act. It's amazing. This book, after you finish it, you're just like, I still got like 800 pages to go. So this book is just packed with action and character moments that I will always hang on to and say that I'm glad that I made it this far in the series because this book made it all worth it. And you know I'm not getting this far into a list, guys, without a little Stephen King on the list, right? But you do know he had a few books come out this year. Now, I wanted to put Later on here because I loved Later. quite a bit. Just thought it was a little short. I always try not to put books that are really, really short on these things, just because, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like when you're saying like this is your favorite novels, it feels kind of weird to say, well, but here's this. Stephen King, a novella is basically a novel for some authors. I don't know. This is a weird conversation to have right now, but that's kind of what I do in this channel. But I also thought Billy Summers was just okay. So I had to go to something that was not released this year, and that was Revival. I read this back in January. It was actually my book of the month for January, and Revival. This was a book I said at the time, I believe, is that I was embarrassed that I hadn't read yet as a constant reader, because this book was just so phenomenal. And it just does that thing that only King knows how to do right. And it's write kids really, really well and talk like kids talk. That's something that seems amazing that a man his age can still do that so well. But to be able to spend, the wonder years with a character, going through childhood into adulthood, that coming of age, growing up with them over years and years and years, in some parts where you're just like, they're not even really doing anything, and you can't put it down. You just want to spend time with that character. That was me with the characters in this book. I just wanted to spend time with them. And the villainous, very, very, very underrated within his multiverse. But this ending is one of the ballsiest endings I think that King has ever written. Maybe one of his darkest that he's ever written. It really is just that messed up. So much so that I believe Mike Flanagan wanted to adapt this, but the studio said we need a more hopeful ending than that. And he said, peace. And he left because he said, I'm not changing the ending. So God bless Mike Flanagan. Even if I'm sad that he won't be making, but Revival, guys, this was awesome. I think this was the best book he's written since 11/22/63, and I don't think he's written one as good as this after this. At least not yet that I've read. So we will talk about that if I get to any more. I think I got a couple in between there that I have. I don't know. I can think of all I want to think about is Lisi's story, which was one of my disappointing ones. Okay, number 5, guys, top 5 here. And I'm going to say what's amazing about this is that my top 5, 3 of them are science fiction. And I never would have expected that at the beginning of the year, because this is I mostly lean fantasy on this channel. I like some sci-fi, but I even do horror more than I do sci-fi. But I read some really good ones this year, because I did put a focus, I think, on sci-fi September this year. And this was the book of the month for September. That is Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. Now, this shouldn't be a shock. I mean, this is a classic for a reason, right? This book will stay in your head for months. I still think about this book. The ideas that Clarke presented in here were just holy crap. I said when I reviewed it that I was very much a fan of Star Trek growing up, and Star Trek was very much a dystopian future. And you just think that I'm sorry, not dystopian, a utopian future. And you think that everything is just going to be great. Everything's just going to work great. This talks about, utopia is great, but at what cost? And this shows the costs of a utopia. And I think it's riveting, and it's 50-something, 70 years old now, and it still has a lot of things that will make you question stuff about the way we do things today, which is incredible that this can transcend the generations like that. But yeah, so many things from this book have been ripped off by other lesser sci-fi writers. So I'm happy that I decided to read this over 2001, because I don't think 2001 would have got me quite as much as this. I have seen the movie of 2001, but this was just so good, and I see so many things that were influenced or ripped off from this story. And it's a classic for a reason, guys. I cannot recommend that you read it enough. Number 4, I talked about this one rather recently, spoke with the author too. It was a really biggest surprise, I think. I'm not going to do that video. I'm not going to do my biggest surprises of the year, because I feel like that's just too redundant of kind of this, my favorite stuff. But if I had to pick a favorite surprise of this entire year, it would be Empire of the Vampire. That's why it's number 4 on this list, because this is a book I kind of wrote off as, it's just more YA, paranormal teen romance, because let's be honest, guys, that's what vampire books have been for the last 20 years or so. Ever since the rise of Twilight, really, the vampire genre has been hijacked away from adults, the ones who grew up reading Anne Rice, So I was just kind of, not for me. And I had so many people saying, no, I think you would really like that. And I'm like, it's got a ton of bad language, it's got sex, it's got violence. I don't know what you're talking about with the YA stuff. So I said, you know what? I got some extra time, I'm going to give it a try. And I blew through this big, beefy boy in about 5 days. It was just that good. You could not put it down. And yeah, this Any other year, this probably would be number one. This is just a really, really strong year. This book was just that good. I'm still theorizing with people on the Discord about it, and a lot of people on the Discord that were like, I never would have expected to read a book like that, have just carried on about how much they've enjoyed it. So, yeah. Number 4 for the year. I still think it could be higher, but it was so recent. I want to try to make sure I'm not doing that recency bias kind of thing or whatever. But yeah, I don't have a lot of problems with this book at all, except that I don't have the second book to read immediately. That's the biggest problem with it. But easily, guys, cover of the year as well. This cover is phenomenal. This is the UK cover. The US cover, not this good, not this pretty. But yeah, what an addition. Best vampire book I've read since probably Tale from the Body Thief by Anne Rice. So I mean that's going back quite a ways. So that's how long it's been that I've been waiting for a new really, really great vampire book. Number 3, guys. This is the fantasy book of the year because my top 2 entries are sci-fi entries. And I think you guys have been following the channel the last 2 years. You know the love affair that I have developed for the writings of John Gwynne. This guy has been everything I have been looking for in a modern fantasy author since Joe Abercrombie. Now, he's not similar to Joe Abercrombie, but here's what I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going into a bookstore, and there's a new book release from Joe Abercrombie, and there's a new book release from John Gwynne. I'm thinking about it for a minute, which one I'm grabbing first. And that's amazing to me because no one's even come close to me with Joe, except maybe George R. R. Martin when he was actually still writing. But you know what I mean. In the last decade, that's someone that no one's been able to come close to that for me. Maybe Sanderson there for a minute. But John Gwynne, guys, this guy is just doing everything that I love about fantasy. He's got the best action. He's got some of the greatest characters. He's got some of the most shocking deaths. He is not scared to get hard on his characters. He's not scared to take them away from you. He's not scared to make you fall in love with them, then take them away from you. The guy just continues to do so many cool things. And with this one, messing around with the Norse and Viking lore and stuff, that is great, great stuff. This is an exciting, exciting new series from him. And I love Faithful and the Fallen. Faithful and the Fallen would be a top 10 fantasy series all time for me. And I think this one has the potential to knock it off if it stays in the same kind of route that this book started with. So book number 2 comes out, I think, in April. And I cannot wait. So guys, if you didn't pick up Shadow of the Gods, please do so because this is just an awesome book. You will fly through. The thing is, he writes these big, big books, and you will fly through them. They're just so easy to read. He writes these quick, small, 6 to 8 page chapters, and you just fly through them. They're so, so good. And this book just keeps that up. Some of the best action scenes that I read this year were in this book. And so John Gwynne continues to crush it. And like I said, he's not in the living room with Joe Abercrombie right now, but he's out in his driveway right now. And that's amazing. I didn't think that would actually ever happen. But John Gwynne, yeah, 8 for 8 with me now. I can't think of very many authors that have done that. 8 books and 8 big thumbs up for me. Number 2, guys, when I started recording this, I didn't know which way this was going to go. I was down to the last 3, and I was like, any one of these could be number 1. So what am I going to do here? With number 2, God, this is so hard. It's so hard. I feel like I'm going to regret it as soon as I say it. Number 2, this is one that I put off for a long, 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 long time. Kind of had a similar story as I had with the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn one that I just did. And this, guys, is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This is a book that just kind of had been on my sci-fi bucket list for a long time. Never had a real reason why I didn't read it. But when I finally did, guys, it not only met those expectations, it exceeded it in every way. So many things with that story are just so out there and twisted and just deliciously brilliant. And the way that the guy writes, and that he writes 7 different stories in that first book here. And he makes them all just riveting in a different way. And a couple of them will actually bring you to tears. They're that good. That is awesome character development, that you can make me care about this character in basically a short story within a story that much that I'm ready to shed tears is incredible. This could be number 1 tomorrow because I said if I'm doing my top 3 science fiction books of all time right now, it's going to be Dune, it's going to be Ender's Game, and probably Hyperion. So then that wasn't just recency bias. That's just how excited I was when I finally read this, and it really met those expectations. So the number 1 book this year, you're going to be like, well, if it's a sci-fi book, how is it not in your top 3 science fiction books of all time? Well, guys, that's a formula I'm not willing to explain right now because I don't even understand how it works. So that's why I said I'm probably going to regret this decision in the morning. I don't know. But guys, I can't think of a book that moved me more in 2021 than Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This book had the ultimate tale of friendship that I have read in years. And it was just one of those books that you just found yourself hurting for this character. You found yourself laughing with this character. You found yourself cheering for him, hoping for the best, expecting the worst because you just know that nothing's going to really end well. And it was one of those things where when you first started, it felt like, oh, he's just doing The Martian again. And then about 100 pages in, it takes a complete left turn out of nowhere, which I don't want to spoil for you if you still haven't read this. And I can't even tell you the synopsis of this book without spoiling that for you. It takes a turn so brilliant that it just took this, oh, okay, this is something different. But again, this book brought me to tears twice. It is that good. It is that emotional, and it is that powerful. And again, guys, it is just the ultimate tale of friendship and just under extreme situations. I can't say that enough. It's very much in that almost like Tom Hanks with his volleyball, and it's in that what was that, Castaway? Yeah, kind of in that way, but a little more real, obviously. But that's kind of the feels that this book will give you, and it just. The ending of this just, oh my God, just woo, it was so good, guys. So satisfying, so well written, so well done. And this guy will be automatic for me going forward. I still don't think I'm going to go read Artemis just because everybody carries on about how terrible it is. But I love The Martian, and I think I like this even more. It's just that good. So, whatever he puts out next, I'll be a day one reader for sure, just like Blake Crouch. I think Andy Weir and Blake Crouch were kind of my biggest surprises this year, and just how much I think I'm going to really, really like those two authors. So, amazing for me for this list, guys. Like I said, top 3 of my top 5 were sci-fi books. Did not expect that. Even though I did kind of expect this to be a more focus on sci-fi year, that Malazan real long schedule change kind of screwed up everything. But I'm glad that I got the sci-fi ones in that I did, because obviously I got some good ones. Because you look at this here, Empire of the Vampire and Project Hail Mary were 2 that were not on my schedule at all. And they both ended in my top 5. So what a year, guys. So guys, that was my top 10 for the year. Again, these weren't rereads. These weren't anything that were multiple from one author or anything like that. Those are my own personal rules. But these are the 10 that I picked. So tell me why mine suck. I hope you'll drop in the comments. Tell me what's your top 10 for the year. Have you read any of these? What do you guys think about them? Let me know what your favorites were for the year, and I will talk to you there.